powder on my face.
Hey guys, and welcome to our bi-weekly dev stream. I want to say bi-weekly annual dev stream every single time.
Why?
I don't know. It doesn't. It just sounds good. Hi, my name is Matt. This is HB.
Hello.
This is Mark.
Hey.
And we've got, I think, some cool stuff to share today. Mark, it's been a week. You're on vacation a little bit this week. How are you feeling?
Good. Yeah. I was off on Monday and Tuesday, which is great.
It's well-deserved time off.
First time in a long time.
Yeah.
But a lot of stuff happened while I was away. The day I left, actually, like some of the servers were having a little bit of a meltdown with like what was showing up in the server browser, and it's just kind of like,
obviously.
I was like, right when I leave, all this stuff has to happen. So no, but it was good. I think the campaign went smoother. Well, it went quite smoothly. It's just kind of like a prototype still. It's sort of just like the basic functionality, and then we're gonna see where we want to take it from there. The update went well, and I think people have been able to, it was a huge concern we always have with these updates, especially when we add something new like the construction vehicle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's always this like thought in our minds of, hey, like, is this gonna be too hard for people? Like, are people even gonna be able to make a town hall? What if towns never get captured now?
Yeah.
And then it's always within like half an hour. Oh, our 3 towns have been captured. No problem. Everyone's driving around with their own construction vehicle. No, but we're always like, it's really weird. It's almost like we always seem to like underestimate how fast
competent they are.
well, how fast people are able to like adapt to new mechanics that we introduce in the game, right? And whether or not they turn out to be like a successful mechanic or not,
or they like it or not,
or whether they like it or not, they're able to definitely like adapt to it and sort of like surprises us every single time. And maybe that means in the future we shouldn't be as scared to like make things more complicated because
they're gonna be so happy about that.
We're always scared about that. But no, that was great.
Wasn't like within like the first 20 minutes the entire server filled with construction vehicles?
Yeah, everyone was just driving around randomly, like for no reason in the starter towns. People were just like, I want to make my own construction vehicle and start driving it around, even though there's no reason to even do it, right? But that's just kind of what always happens when there's a new feature in the game,
if
right?
they want to have the slowest race ever, go for it.
Yeah. I mean, back when we introduced the trucks the first time, it was basically
it was so much fun.
It was like truck shuttling service game simulator for the first like few hours, and like people were doing nothing, and all the towns were filled with trucks.
It was a loop of you either are in a truck or you're outside a truck being run over by a truck.
Yeah, it was like absolute like chaos.
We also had way less room. It was, if you remember at the time, it was just like it was like a slice of Deadlands.
Yeah, and I think the roads were a little bit like narrower as well.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. So that's good. And I think the other thing I want to mention was that we have for the last while been talking about when we're going to launch into early access, and we're still finalizing things, but just wanted to make a mention that we're sort of targeting the middle of summer. So like the end of July, early August maybe. We're sort of still, there's a few like dates that we have in mind, but we're starting to get closer, and it's going to be
nerve-wracking.
It's going to be nerve-wracking, and we're going to start talking more about how we feel you guys can help us with a successful launch. Obviously it'll help us if you buy the game. Right?
That's a big part.
That's obviously like the big one, but there are other ways to like help out too, and I think we're just gonna start talking about that soon. Not gonna spend too much time on it today, but just sort of as like a heads up, so you guys kind of know what's happening, right? Yeah. Cool. I guess it's
awesome. Well, I mean, if that's all we have to say about all that. HB's got a small announcement about the community highlights. So, and then we'll get into the community highlights right after that.
Yeah. So things are going to change a little bit the way we do the community highlights for this on the stream, because I think we need to give a little bit more back to you guys. So the way we're gonna do it, the post is gonna continue the same. We're gonna pick up the things that we think are cool and we're gonna put in the post so you can see the whole post and see everything that community has been doing. But on the stream, what we're gonna do is we're gonna, instead of just glance at everything, because you guys can do it on your own, just go to the post, go to the website and see it. We're gonna focus on a little few things. And every 2 weeks in this case, we're gonna try to focus on a little different things that caught our attention more than others. Just to shine a light on some of these artists and some of these things, and actually be able to talk about them. So yeah.
Awesome.
So yeah, the first thing that I want to talk about was these drawings that were done, and these were done some time ago, and these are supposed to be a Warden Light Tank. These one were done by A.G. I forgot his name. Sorry, Sir Grayson. Yeah, he did some other artwork before. He did artwork for actually a colonial version, and the reason why I wanted to focus on this one is because it looks similar, but it has a completely different aesthetics of it, right? So the cool thing is that, as you guys know, today we're gonna show the actual Warden
Light
Tank.
Tank, yeah.
So I think it's very interesting to see his rendition before even knowing what it's supposed to look, and how he imagined a Warden version would be, and compare both of them. So I think that was a really, really nice piece.
I like the little goober turret on the top. Like the little, I think it's
like a
it's almost like a periscope.
Yeah, also like you're in a pillbox that you can see all around, like 360. Yeah, it looks really cool. So I like that one in particular.
There is one thing I do want to say about the design here that is kind of interesting, is that the shape of the treads. When we were thinking about how the colonial tanks were going to look and how the Warden tanks were going to look, the shape of the treads was sort of one of these things that we were thinking of, and in a lot of the brainstorms for the Warden tank, we were actually thinking of treads that were shaped more like irregularly, and where the Warden ones were more like, had more like uniform shapes, right? So I just something I wanted to like point out there.
Yeah, so it's really cool. I like the way that he incorporated the whole. Well, he incorporated the concept of having like a small 3-person tank with like one main gun that is powerful, but it's not like a heavy tank or anything like that, right?
Right.
But it's on a completely different style. So I really enjoyed this one. It's a nice drawing. It's well done. Very good job. The next thing that I wanted to focus on is this very first video there. You can Control 0, please.
Control 0.
There you go.
Great.
Yeah, it's very short. So these are all together.
Is there sound or?
Sounds like there's some sound. I think that's coming from our monitor. I don't know if that's going through the stream.
So what is happening here?
So these guys were like planning everything, and I think this is goddamn genius. They were planning everything, and we know that we have problem with griefers that like kill a lot of people in our game and everything. These guys were planning, and some very sneaky bastard just toss a grenade there. Everybody panics, and then they realize it's a smoke grenade. I was like, "Fuck, this is so good." That this encompasses a lot of what is fun about having like a sandbox game.
Yeah.
In which, sure, we understand that griefing is a problem, but this is when you're
like things are unpredictable, right?
Yeah, and this is when like you take that concept of like, oh, people are, well, pardon my French, assholes, and they like will grenade everybody in a huge area, but somebody takes it and put it like a small grenade just for fun.
Just as a prank.
Just as a prank. This is nice. So I really, really like this one.
I think that's a really good prank.
It's right?
Well, because I think the reason why people are really scared of that kind of stuff is because in Foxhole, if you die, you can lose a lot of progress.
Yeah.
It depends on what you have. If you're a fresh spawn, it's no big deal, right? But if you're carrying like materials or anything, and like something happens, then you can lose like a lot of work, and I think that's why there's always like a panic for things like this, which makes it even more funny because it's just smoke. Right?
It's just smoke, yeah. Literally. So yeah, the next thing I wanted to talk about a little bit, just scroll down more. It's gonna be more towards the bottom. More, a little bit more. You can get it there. This one, yes.
Yes.
So this is really, really cool. So I don't know if you guys can see on the very first image on the top.
Well, I can zoom in first.
Yeah.
And then go down slow.
So this was a suggestion, and look, I am a sucker for drawings. You guys know this already, so I am always. So I like this in so many different venues. I like the drawings. I like the ideas that are conveyed, and I like the fact that these are suggestions and how he appropriated that.
Mm-hmm.
So what he's doing is he's giving different possibilities for how to deal with tanks and having with trucks and having variations of the truck. So you have a mobile workshop truck that you can use to build things on the truck, but you have one that is just for having people drive around, like more sort of a bus, you know. You have one that has a heavy machine gun at the top, so you can have like a heavy machine gun similar to the way that you have a half track and things like that. And so he did a truck half track or armored truck on the number 2 there.
Truck track.
Yeah, it's he called it an armored truck. And Turtle and Rabbit, he did a fantastic job of that. But to top it off on the suggestion, if you can scroll up a little bit, they took scroll the other way around. Yeah, he took renders from the game and actually created those.
Right. So this is like a Photoshop job.
It's a great Photoshop job in my opinion.
Yeah, it looks like very integrated.
Exactly, right? It's so realistic.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really cool as well, because not only it helps us to understand the idea, it helps us to see how it fits in the game and if it fits or not. Because sometimes people, if you create a futuristic armor, it doesn't fit in the game. But so this is a heck of a suggestion. And
this is also sorry.
I was going to say, you guys know that we read other suggestions, but it definitely get our eyes if it's something as well done as this.
Yeah, I mean, there's even like a little mount here for a gun. I think one of the things that's kind of cool about this is bringing some trade-offs between, like, allowing to customize your truck and having a trade-off, and it gives more choice, which is always something that we're looking for, because even at the beginning, and even still now to an extent, it's just something that we haven't gotten around to thinking about kind of like hard enough, is that we felt that there should be a trade-off between loading your truck with players and loading it with like equipment. Right?
Yeah, we discussed it so long ago.
Yeah, like at the beginning we had ideas of, okay, if you have a player that's sitting in your truck, then it'll take up some slots, right? So you can't store as many things in that truck, right?
Sort of as if it was a weight system or something. Like we had different concepts of how to do it.
And I think we settled what we have right now. For the time, it was the simplest thing, and then we still have the system now. But I think this is kind of cool just because it gives more choice. I think it's like would be pretty crazy to implement something like this. But I think it's cool as a brainstorm, right? I think it makes you think about the possibilities, right?
And I, like, honestly speaking, I don't think it's completely out of the realm of possibility at all.
No, it's not out of the realm. It's not out of the realm of possibility.
It's very possible. It's very doable. It as with everything that we want to put in the game, is the kind of things that we have to have, like, some factors. It's got to fit in the game, which this one fits perfectly. We gotta have time to do it.
Yeah.
Right, and then we wanna do it.
Yeah.
We have 2 of those 3. We don't know if the third one is possible. Like, the time is. We have other things that come up sometimes.
I think with the time one, it's almost like there are 1,000 things that we want to do.
Yeah.
So then you have to play the priority game constantly, which a lot of times when there's a suggestion made, it sounds like you're hearing the same thing over and over again, which is like, hey, that's cool, we're gonna look into it, we'll see what happens. And we sound like a broken record, but there's a reason, and that's literally, like, we can't do everything at once, and there are way more suggestions than we have time to work on them. So it does end up being like, for every 100 suggestions, we can probably work on 1.
Yeah.
And even then it's tough when there's bugs and there's a lot of other stuff that is there. But I think a lot of this, we say this a lot, but for all the new people out there, is like, once the larger problems are more settled, right? Then we have time to work on
a little bit more on the
more
medium
on
size.
Yeah, exactly.
And then eventually on the smaller side. So keep suggesting. I know sometimes it seems like it's falling to deaf ears, but it's not. We do take all the suggestions.
I mean, to be upfront though, at the end of the day, like even in the finished product, there's probably only going to be a small percentage of all the suggestions.
Absolutely, yes.
Just to be upfront, we're not eventually going to get to everything.
No, yeah. But we want to have the best game the same way that you guys know that you guys want to have the best game as well. So we're on the same page on that one.
Furthermore, this suggestion needs to fit.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the first one.
Where I think this one
really
is really interesting.
Yeah, and it works towards some of the goals that we want.
Yeah,
it's kind of cool.
So do we have more time for
we got
one last thing? The last thing that I wanted to point out is like there was a lot of things about clans this past week, and are these the logos. The logos for the clans. And I gotta be honest, we had clans ever since the inception of the game. It's just something that naturally occurred in the game, and we had some pretty interesting logos. The very first clan logo was just a line.
Was just a line?
Yeah, just the line.
Picture of a
from line. It was just a picture of the line. Okay. And that was the very first. It came like very quickly, and then we had the 40-second decay, and then right. I'm pretty sure.
What happened to the line? I mean, I guess it's kind of
the emote is still there. I didn't get rid of it.
Anyways, yeah.
But I wanted to point out that the clan logos, the art for them are like really stepping up. It's quite impressive. We have the Brazilian one, the UBGE. We have the Demiurge Imperial Guard.
Is that a new clan?
It's a new clan. I think
it's based off the lore.
It's based off the lore, yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool. And we have the French Foreign Legion.
So the French Foreign Legion has been like, I've seen them pretty active in the last few weeks actually.
Apparently it's just although they're not French. I was looking into it.
Really?
They are not French, but the concept, they are from other places, but the concept of the clan is based on the French Foreign Legion that existed.
Okay.
As far as I know, correct me if I'm wrong.
Right.
So I think that these are really cool because you see different styles, some incorporate our own imagery, but now that we have a more settled visual for our game, it's interesting to see that people are able to create things on the same venue.
Yeah, I think before we were on much shakier ground because we kept saying logos were going to be redesigned one day, right? Yeah. And now it's more stable. I mean, my wish is that one day we can get these logos actually in the game in some form. I mean, there's a lot of hoops we'd have to jump through to make that happen, but
there's one suggestion that we hear all the time: can you stamp your logo in a truck or something like that, right?
I mean, I think it would be really cool if it was in the game on a truck, or even at the minimum on like a profile screen or like in the player screen, if you can choose like your clan colors and have that appear like beside your name,
it's similar to the concept of like the flag and the banner in Diablo, or the emblem. There's like what's it called, what's a banner? It's like anyway, the emblem creator in For Honor is really robust. They give you lots of shapes and colors and layers. You could make most of these things with simple shapes, probably, and letters, and so there's something there that just is time to.
Well, I think that'd be a great way to do it if it was actually.
It's a creator. It's
on like a physical banner. In the game, so it kind of fits into the theme.
Although there's a reason why all these games you use their creator to make the banner
because of like legal reasons.
Of course, you never know if somebody's gonna put something unsavory.
Yeah, the law is good, but the law sucks as well. So it's a lot of in the past with a lot of the stuff that you guys do, we've had people in the past. They like come up to us and they'd be like, "Hey, you should take this. You should use it."
Yeah, can I work for you and just do this?
And there's been times when we want to, but like there is like the legal reason, and unfortunately, it makes things more complicated, right?
Yeah.
And like just between us, like obviously, like we don't want any of those barriers. If we didn't have to worry about that, we'd be like, great, let's just like
Yeah, you made a new weapon. Let's put it in the game.
Yeah,
it's
right.
not like that.
So it's just it's just very complicated. So
And anyway, yeah, this was my highlights for the community highlights for this 2 weeks.
great.
And you guys can check the rest of it. As always, keep submitting. I take a look at everything that you guys submit, and I put in the community highlights, so you can check on the Foxhole website.
Cool. Okay, so now we're gonna move on to this week's dev stream, and I think there's gonna be some cool stuff, and Mark's gonna kind of handle.
Yeah, there's a couple of small things.
Couple small things, just some small
Well,
stuff.
I mean,
Yeah, actually, it was kind of small.
It's not that big.
outside of the Warden Tank, but you guys knew it was coming. So, but yeah, so there's a couple of cool things. First one is Fisherman's Rope, right?
Yeah.
So this is something that we've been thinking about for like a while, and as the time we were waiting for the time and place to kind of do something like this, and now that we're sort of closer to being at the time to introduce the game to more players, we wanted to work on this map as sort of the stepping stone to some of the harder stuff in Foxhole, because it's a pretty, as you guys know, it's a pretty harsh game for new players, and it's often very difficult for a new player to jump into the game because it's very frustrating. You know, we've definitely seen those times when some streamer came on, a bunch of new players come in, you get spawned in the middle of nowhere and the map is gigantic, and you know, like, you're just running around not knowing what to do, and someone shoots you and you just kind of like forget this game, right? Sort of thing. So we feel that like we wanted to make a map that would be a good place to let people go the first time they experience the game. And one of our requirements was we wanted this map to still capture all the elements of the game in a basic way still. So you're not playing a different game. It's not like a new mode. It's not like deathmatch or something,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're still running supply lines. You're still building. You're still doing everything you do in a bigger game, but it's slightly more focused. It's more linear, and it's easier for a first-time player, right?
I think one of the key differences too, Callahan's Passage, the very first version of Callahan's Passage, was kind of like had a similar outcome, even though it wasn't the goal.
Mhm.
Simply because it was like there wasn't really much to do in the first version of Callahan's Passage.
Mhm.
Do you remember? And when we redesigned it, we tried to make it so it was far more like versatile in terms of the strategies available. One of the things that's worth noting is like we do want to give that same experience of like the open space as well. And it's not like just that you're not like lined with rocks and you can't like go. You can go
Right.
anywhere. It's like it is more linear, but still trying to give that feeling of like a choice of
I
strategy.
mean, I think one of the things is that we don't want players to be as lost as much in this map, jumping into the game for the first time, and it's a bit of a special case map, so it's not going to be part of the campaign. It's not going to be part of the World Conquest mode.
Yeah.
And it's going to have a 60 player limit just because it's going to be a smaller map. It doesn't make sense to have like more than 30 players per side. And besides, the main goal for this map is to help ease new players into the experience, but there's a couple of other, I guess, like secondary factors as to why we want to make this. And I think one thing that we've actually seen a lot, and people have kind of often, they've asked us, hey, can we have like just a map up, like a clan with like 30 people would be like, hey, can we just have a map where we can try out some things, right? That's certainly been like asked a couple of times. So we think there's value even like for players that have been around for a long time, like, hey, if we push out a new patch and they don't want to play full war, but they just kind of want to like experience a couple of the new things, or they want to do training exercise or something, this is certainly a place where that can happen, right? This is like one of the secondary goals. And another one of the secondary goals is helping us. Sometimes we have this issue with like spinning up all these huge maps during player spikes, right?
Mhm.
And a lot of them end up turning into like ghost towns after. And often because we'll spin up a big map like the Weather Expanse, 120 brand new players come in, fill that map, not having a clue how to play the game, and half of them leave, and that happens to like a whole bunch of the maps, and you end up with a bunch of maps that aren't full at all. There's only a couple people in, and then we have to shut them down, and it kind of sucks to shut down actually those larger maps, right? Because people have already put in some people have put in a lot of work, and you know they're sort of these maps that are expected to be played in a longer form, and it sucks to have to shut those down. So we think this could help in some of those situations. Okay, sure, if we have a smaller streamer come in and there's another extra 100-200 players, but maybe that won't last for that long, right? If we have a couple of instances of the skirmish map up, they can come in, have a less frustrating experience, and if we have to shut down the server after, it's not as big a deal. People aren't losing progress on this giant world, right? So another thing is like in the future, actually right now, as an example, where the first campaign finished, and the next one's not going to start up until a little later this week, right? This would be a perfect time to have this map there to just kind of be there to like buffer the time in between campaigns, so we don't have to necessarily be like, hey, let's spin up a whole nother weathered expense, right? Or a whole nother whatever. Like it's just instead, if we had a couple of instances of these, people can go in, they can still play the game, and it just gives us more flexibility that we need, and we're still kind of finding our footing with regards to like the balance of between when we're going to have a campaign, when there's going to be like a world conquest war, and when we're going to run these skirmish maps, or when we're going to have just the plain old server with like one of the old maps. And I think this will help us with trying to like juggle all these things, right? Because it gives us that flexibility. So that's kind of mostly all I have to say about that.
I'm excited about it, to be honest.
In terms of some of the look and feel, Matt, if you wanted to just touch upon that really quickly.
So, like, because this map is designed to be, I guess, like training, it's designed to be smaller and kind of encompass like the different parts of Foxhole. The map itself also do the same in terms of just like the features. So you're gonna have like farmland, you're gonna have like a more slightly denser urban area, similar to like what's in Deadlands. You're gonna have some water, there's a bridge, there's gonna be some elevation, like it's a little kind of like a cross section of the entire game, and so it's sort of like an amalgam of everything. So it doesn't have this like one cool feature, but I think it's got lots of different things that you'll get to see. So it's a little bit more like dense. There's a forest. I guess similar to like Deadlands, but like
a small version of the
small Deadlands, which should be kind of interesting. I based like thematically, I sort of based it on like the way that it looks on like PEI, like Prince Edward Island. So like when you think about that type of space, that's sort of what I was thinking. And I think from a like a level design flow, it should sort of, when you spawn in, you're going to have a little bit more space. The starting towns have a little bit more room, a little bit roomier than some of the other ones, because we don't want you to get like confused or lost. And there should be pretty clear like places to go, instead of just like, oh, there's so many places, I don't know where to be or what to do. You should kind of know where you're going and what you're doing. So
cool. And also in the context of the world, this is actually going to be a part of the world. It's not just a magical, even though it's not going to be part of the campaign, we put some thought into
part
that.
of the where
It's part of the world.
So can I make an addendum to that? 2 weeks ago, somebody asked about islands, and I guess technically we're doing one.
Yeah, well, some people had said like, oh, I want a Fisherman's Rope map, and I was like, like it's because in an early world map, this location, it was in the like the upper left corner, and I don't really think it's too different from that location now.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is like canonical. It's not just some random place. So yeah,
which means there might be lore there.
There's some lore,
and that's kind of like an area that we're kind of interested in exploring in the future.
Yeah, nice little mark there.
Submarine
marked
wars?
it. All right, so
submarines not confirmed. Cool.
All right, so let's move on to the next topic.
So the next cool thing is rifle grenade launcher, right? This is kind of cool, I think.
You got me by surprise.
I know you guys found it kind of silly.
It looks kind of silly.
But just before anyone who's not familiar with this, this is from World War II. This is how a grenade launcher, at least some of them looked, right? So this is based, it's not like we're not remaking a real weapon because we never do that, but this is based on how a lot of the grenade launchers worked in World War II, as silly as it looked.
You got me by surprise. I was like,
Yeah.
no way. I was like,
Well,
yeah,
it's kind of like an adapter that soldiers would put on their rifle. I think like there was like an M7 grenade launcher where they would attach just kind of like an adapter piece that you put onto a grenade, and then you stick that onto like the end of your rifle, and then you fire it, right? If you go to YouTube, there's a lot of videos on this. Actually, it's pretty fascinating. Because it's not how you would think a grenade launcher looks like, right? So, but our goal for this, there's a purpose. We do feel, and it kind of goes hand in hand with this second point here, that when we change, so it's funny because the mortar had actually like multiple purposes, right? Like one of the purposes was that it was really good for taking out static defenses from far away. And it was also good at taking out infantry at range, and it was kind of this low barrier tool for that. And we actually we were so focused on like nerfing that the taking out the static defense, that aspect of the weapon, and we ended up nerfing the whole thing. And I'm still happy with that nerf. And I think that it makes sense because it was such an extreme range weapon, and it was kind of like a point and click again. It didn't make any sense that it worked very differently from the howitzer and everything. So totally happy with that. But we sort of lost this, the other side of it, right? And we feel that this is gonna bring back some of that functionality, right? And so hopefully could be helpful in situations where you want to repel like an attacking force at a slightly further range than you can throw a grenade. So we'll have more to say about how it works exactly, but it will work with the rifle that we have right now, and that the first version of it is going to work with the frag grenades, possibly with smoke and green ash, right? So we think it's cool if it's kind of like if you can just use multiple like grenades with it to give more versatility to it, so it's not just this kind of like one trick thing. But that's something that we're working on. It's not going to work with the high explosive grenades
for obvious reasons. Otherwise,
well, it's too heavy, right? It's way too heavy. It's just not going to work. And whoop, almost jumped the gun there. And that's just kind of mostly all we have to say about this for now. Should be coming in the near future, and we're working on it, right?
Yep.
Cool.
Sweet.
And then the next thing is we're gonna talk about the Warden Light Tank.
So you guys remember what was the drawing?
Sorry?
Do you remember the drawing that we showed earlier?
Oh, right.
So that was the prediction.
Yeah. And
let's see how close he was.
Now this is the real one. So here it is.
Just let that simmer for a moment.
Yeah, just let that simmer for a moment. So this is a Warden Light Tank. We showed the counterpart to it, the Colonial Light Tank, a couple of weeks ago. I think 2 streams ago. And we actually had both of the tank designs done pretty much when we had announced the contest a while back.
Yeah, we had to have.
Yeah, so for those of you who didn't know about it, maybe you weren't here for that long, we had a contest, we had a war where the faction that won the war, we would reveal their tank first, right? So the Colonial tank was the first one that we showed, and then now the Warden tank is shown. But we actually had all these tanks all ready to go back then. I mean, some of the concepts weren't there yet. Like
this image, for instance, was not there.
This image is something that we worked on since then. But there are some, at the time when we had worked on it, we had put a lot of thought into what would make a tank unique to the Wardens. And what what the contrasts would be. And one of the things that we leaned heavily on is that the colonial tanks need to really look like they could be like mass produced, right? That at one point the colonials had to make like thousands of these tanks and make them really fast too, right? Whereas the Warden tanks, the contrast was that they had to look like they were slightly more like handcrafted, where they probably cared about like the craftsmanship a little bit more than the, more so than, I guess, relatively speaking, than the functionality, right? And that they kind of had a lot of like pride in their work on how the tank looked, and sort of really proud of their own like engineering, right? And that the look of the tanks had to like reflect these. So we had spent a lot of time on that, and Matt, if you want to talk a little bit more about some of the lore behind this.
Yeah, so I mean, like, the general idea was of the manufacturing practices between the two factions, like Mark said, is the colonials were really efficient. They know how to make things fast and make things work. The Wardens, on the other hand, they like to make works of art. They like to make like things with high craftsmanship, which doesn't always work when you're in a really high stress situation. So this particular tank, the Devitt Mark III, it is the refinement that allowed them to kind of keep up with the colonial pace. So it isn't the first version of this type of tank, and some of the earlier models might have looked a little more crafted, a little bit more like embellished, but they had to sort of adapt to compete with the colonials, who were putting way more tanks on the field at the time. So this is how we got to this tank. And I think one of the interesting things is a lot of like the rounded surfaces on the tank. That's like a really particular design choice, so that they were able to kind of deflect things off of the tank a little bit more accurately. And also, I think if you go to the next image, they had some exposed like machinery that they chose to cover, and the way that they built their treads changed over time, and so I think it could be kind of an interesting contrast between the two.
Yeah, and this is a light tank, and like we said last time, we have at least another 2 tanks in the plan, I guess is the best way to put it. Probably won't see them anytime that soon, but we do want at least like 3 tanks per faction in the game. So it's gonna be a while before we talk about before we show off more tanks. So
bask in the glory.
These are the 2 that you're stuck with for now, right? So cool. I guess that's kind of all we have to talk about in the dev feature portion of the stream.
I guess one of the last things to talk about with the tanks is that in terms of like how they'll function in game, they'll be pretty similar. I don't really think there's going to be a dramatic difference between the two. If there's any,
I think if we put any differences in, I think they will be
like
minor,
pretty minor, at least at this stage. So yeah.
Yeah, so far the game has been like balanced.
Yeah,
exactly the same. I have the same.
And I think one of the reasons why we're starting there, this doesn't mean that we're never going to change that, but there's like so many variables in the game already, and we feel like there's still a lot of like game balancing issues that we have to solve. And then once we bring the tanks out, surely there's going to be even more game balancing issues. So it seems really silly to add more complexity on top of that for the sake of complexity, right? But I think one of the things that I could see happening, is that once the more fundamental like balancing issues are sorted out, and that stuff is on really stable ground, right? Then I think we will feel much more comfortable then with adding the complexity of, okay, maybe the
weapons,
next tank that we make, or maybe even these tanks will change it so that like they are different, right? So yeah,
I agree.
Sounds great. All right, guys. So we're going to move on to the community questions, the Q&A section. So if you guys have questions, start asking questions. And one of the things that people wanted to see before we get into that, though, is they wanted to see the stats again. Can you go to the
stats
screen?
Yeah.
One more time. I think people only got like a small second.
Yeah.
And by the way, this is the look in game. Yeah. So
So the question, this is kind of similar to how it will look when you actually play. So one of the questions that came up a little while ago, I'm just going to ask that question first, is that will there be a bigger version of Fisherman's Rope that will be included in World Conquest? I think the answer to that is no. Well, Fisherman's Rope is designed specifically to be a small map.
Though I have something to add to that answer.
Go ahead,
Right. So no, there won't be a larger version of that map included, but we are going to be exploring the area that is around Fisherman's Rope. So like, depending on how you look at it, there could be a larger map.
There could be similar maps, but they're not exactly that.
They're not exactly, exactly.
I mean, if you like the thematic elements of that area, you'll be happy.
Then hold on to your seats.
So there's a couple questions now.
This is off, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's gone now.
Actually, before we get into that, Matt, do we have time for any suggestion discussion? Because we're not too far ahead, right? Or do you want to just skip that? It's your call.
For this week, let's skip that. We'll ask or answer a lot of questions this week.
Okay.
And
Sounds
maybe
good.
next week in particular, we can, or the next Devstream, we
week,
can go through some more suggestions.
Cool.
This question, I'm going to ask it, but I'm not exactly sure what they're asking. Maybe you guys will have a better idea. What would you do with rocks and cliffs? They feel rough and alien compared to the rest of the game, especially for aiming up and down. It's frustrating.
I think he's asking particularly about elevation, like gameplay elevation, right? Not the visual of it.
Okay. So that makes more sense. So you can explain the question.
What would you do with rocks and cliffs? They feel rough. So I think he's talking about like we have elevation in the game. We have rocks, we have cliffs, we have even people going up on houses, but we do have issues of aiming up and down and things like that. So like the actual combat is complicated because of elevation, and it's okay when you're like on the same level as the person, you have no problems.
Right. I think I'd like to hear more about the details of the actual problem. I think, at least in the basic functional way, it should work. It's probably could be rough in certain corner cases. If I know sometimes the aiming can be a little bit rough if the targeting line kind of like hits a snag on its way down and like little things like that. But other than those corner cases, I think if you're standing on a high elevation, you should be able to shoot at someone who's on a lower level, right? I don't think there's any problem with that, which is why I'd like to hear more information about that. Right?
We did add some aim offsets as well for that specifically. It's something that we did, like so that it's easier for you to aim up and down, like that's even reflected in animation. And I know that Nuba was working on things like that. That if you are in a different elevation, like in the gameplay, if you are in different elevation, there were compensation that was done, so it was easier for you to aim.
I think it works at a basic level. So maybe there are some corner cases where it's not working well, or maybe we're just not understanding the question, which is why I think maybe
more explanation.
Maybe after the stream you can like fire off a question on the forum or on the Reddit.
You can tag me for that question in particular. And
I think it's important to know too, like if you do have high ground, you do have an advantage in real life as well. So like you shouldn't be able to like shoot straight up at someone on a cliff. Unless you can properly like get that line of sight, and maybe I think maybe there's some stuff we can do in terms of like information that we're giving the player to how their line. I think it's one of those cases actually. I think we probably need more information on the question itself because we may be completely misinterpreting.
We may be talking about it. Maybe he was talking about the visuals and the visuals. The rocks don't look like I don't know.
Will Tanner the guy asks, will turret rotation be based on mouse movement or will it have a set rotation speed?
The what?
The turret rotation of the tanks will be based on mouse movement like aiming currently is, or will it have a speed?
Well, that's an interesting question because your weapon aiming is actually not one-to-one with your mouse. On some weapons, it seems like it, like on the pistol. So right now, when you aim, each weapon has like a turn speed that defined for it, and the tank turret is just going to be the same, right? Like if you've used like the howitzer or something, it kind of slowly turns to where your mouse is pointed. And even if you're using like a rifle, it does slowly turn. But for the case of some machine guns, rifles, and most of like the small ballistic weapons,
it's much quicker. So
it's so fast that you don't really notice. But you know, if you're using like the heavy machine gun as an example, it is kind of slow to turn. Although you have to aim while crouched, so it's a bit different. But yeah, so I guess the answer there is that it's not going to be 1-to-1. Just like it's not 1-to-1
never
now.
1-to-1. Yeah.
It was never 1-to-1.
I mean, I think a really good example of something in game that might be similar to the way that the turret will work. I'm not going to comment on speed or anything, but is the kind of construction vehicle. If you're in the construction slot,
Yeah.
because you can turn
The cabin.
The cabin. So anyway, so I had a really good question from Lightning, which is a surprise. What will the early access release bring? Just a price tag or any changes? And what will the early access release change in development? So how will early access change things?
First of all, are we ready to talk about it?
Yeah, so I mean, some of that stuff not ready to talk about, but I think some stuff we are. So did he ask about the price?
Will it bring just a price? Like, will it just be the same game but for sale, or will there be changes?
No. So we are planning several features that are gonna come with the early access release. The tanks are gonna come with it. We're gonna do some earlier testing with a smaller audience, like a closed test with tanks, but that's gonna come for everyone in the early access release. There's also a couple of features that we haven't even talked about yet that are gonna come with the early access release. And so we'll be ready to reveal those at some later point. But believe me when I say that we laid out a plan, like I guess probably like 2 months ago or something.
At least
2 months ago, where we're like, okay, these are the things that we want in the early access release, but we're also going to continue to do the regular updates, which is why it's been a bit difficult sometimes, and because we're both working on stuff for the early access release and the bi-weekly updates that we have. But you can definitely expect more than tanks.
But in a way, it is still the same game. We're not good.
It's going to be the same. Yeah, it's going to be the same game. So, and in terms of the development, how that's going to change, I mentioned this before. So what we're going to try to do in early access is we're going to try to reduce the number of changes where we completely flip the tables and change the way that a huge thing works, like the factory system. And that's not to say that's never going to happen, but we're not going to do that as often and as I would say
easily.
Like right now, we still feel like we're prototyping the game, so we're very comfortable with just sort of with like pulling the rug underneath everyone and just saying, well, there's no more scrap or something, right?
Not confirmed.
Not confirmed. Not happening. But but like right now, we're very comfortable with just changing things completely because we're still prototyping the gameplay, right? And even in the next couple of updates, who knows? Maybe we'll change something else. But when the early access comes out, that will happen maybe like way less often. It'll still happen, but we're going to continue making content with the game. I think I would expect, if there is one expectation, I would imagine that some of the content will probably come out just slightly slower. And that's because we're going to be spending a lot more time on fixing bugs and on like polishing things too. So like right now the balance is like there's a lot of new features, we're just changing things around like so fast, whereas in the early access what we hope to do is take all the changes, all the new features, make that slightly less of our time, and then slightly more of time that's put towards like polish, new player experience, fixing bugs.
Yeah.
But don't expect a major like shift in how we do things.
And the core concept of the game are the same. We still want it to be, of course, a multiplayer game in which you have to work with your team.
Yeah.
And then it's
exactly. So cool.
All right. So the next question comes from
Love Freitas.
Perfect. Any ETA on player profiles, or at least the ability of adding a clan tag?
Right. So it's a good question.
that has pristine chaos, which is working on
Yeah,
profiles
so-
right now.
We actually are working on them right now. We actually had a huge meeting about it just this morning, and we're working on it right now. It's moved from like, I guess, sort of at the top of the list to like the top of the list. So it's one of the main things that we're working through right now. And the clan tags is something that we're planning to like officially support. But yeah, I don't want to say too much about all that stuff until it's closer to being finished.
Yeah. But yeah, so there. And quick answer: there's no ETA yet.
Yeah.
But we are working on
Sorry,
it actively.
I tend to not answer the question.
We're actively working on it right now.
Tanner the guy asks, are tank types past heavy planned for the future builds, such as super heavy?
Such like, oh,
I just wanted
we
to ask
actually
that
talked about this. To be honest, we talked about what are the limits that we can go with, not only tanks but pretty much all the technology that we're introducing. We mentioned a lot about, you guys seen in, there's one place in a map and you see a giant old rusty cannon and you're like, what is this? So like we actually talked about the technology and where it can go and how far.
Yeah, there's definitely like pieces. There are things in the world. The idea of super weapons are part of the world. They're definitely part of the world, and they've been there from like the very beginning. In terms of if and when we explore that kind of stuff, I think it still goes back to like we always want to try to target to first work on things that are really important for the game, and to settle things and to sort of have a really solid ground in terms of the theme, like in terms of the lore, in terms of the gameplay, and you know, and all that stuff before working on the more crazier things. Because if we were to just work on a super weapon right now, right, without even solidifying stuff like the normal tanks and stuff, you know, it'd just be crazy, right? Then we'd be like all over the place, right? But we have to form a strong ground with like more like grounded weapons first. So I guess to answer the question is that I think we've always wanted to do stuff like that. I think we've always felt like, you know, eventually months later, you know, we'll start thinking about that stuff.
Yeah,
right?
it's something that we would be very excited to work on, and we did discuss it before. So
yeah. If you look in the dev blogs, some of our old concept art has some of that cool stuff in there. So
yeah,
you should check it out.
Okay, so yeah, some people are saying here, isn't there a concept piece with a huge tank for Kansas? I don't know where this 9909 number came for the price of the game, but that's not what
9909.
That's not. I don't know where
dollars.
That's from. Yeah, so just whatever that is, I don't know. So this is an interesting question. With the 37 millimeter and 40 millimeter for the tank guns will not be interchangeable. I think the ammo will be interchangeable.
Oh, the ammo for the tanks, which are like slightly different.
Yeah.
Caliber?
I mean, I think we're still finalizing some of that stuff. Our first thoughts is that they are going to be, but I definitely think we're not at the point where we can have like a definite answer on it necessarily, even though we.
By the way, those stats might be tweaked for gameplay reasons.
Like anything, I guess we
Yeah.
should just always remind that everything we show you is work in progress.
Yeah.
So, like if you're looking at like the Fisherman Rope map and thinking that that's the final positions for like all the structures and stuff.
Who knows? Even
buildings,
with based on gameplay, who knows? Maybe one city is too close to another or something like that.
That stuff can change. So, a question from the gaming sir. I'm going to summarize this, but basically, it takes a lot of votes to kick anybody. Will this be addressed in the future? It seems to be a lot of work for mods and players.
Can I talk about this a little bit?
Sure. Yeah.
Yes, it takes a lot of votes to kick anybody, and that was changed recently, and that was by design in a way. We do have now a system in which if you a small number of votes stop people from doing a lot of actions that would be griefing actions, and that is by design, as I said. And because of that, because we introduced this system, we raised the number of votes for kicking. Kicking, think about it. You're playing a game in a way. If something that technically is not against gameplay, it's kind of weird that like, oh, you're banned from this game for 7 days. So like, not so good. That's why we like much better if people just stop doing that action but continue to play, like become an active member of the community, a contributing member of the community, right? We prefer that than straight up kicking. That's why we introduce the idea of restricting weapons, restricting chat, and things like that. People learn through,
Yeah, it's vote kicking is such a tricky thing because there's two sides. There's always two sides to it, which is we don't have enough vote kicks, or we
have too much.
It's too hard to vote kick, and then the other side is it's too easy to vote kick people.
And then people abuse the vote kick system. Yeah,
people like abuse the vote kick system, and at times in the past it's been really bad in one way or like the other. I don't think it's perfect still, but I think that just based on things we're seeing, it's, I would say, at least an improvement over.
It was definitely. Looking at the statistics of the game, like just like followed us so closely, we could see that it was a better environment. But we are doing other things as well. We are working on it. We're still working on it, right? Like for the next update.
I mean, I have to check. I'm not sure what's there for the next update.
Is it the auto?
No, I think that was already in the last.
That was already in the last one. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I also want to say that, like HB was saying, like we don't even really necessarily think vote kicking is like the ultimate answer at the end of the day. Like just giving players this kind of power to like just go and like kick someone off the server, ultimately, no matter what, is going to have its issues, right?
Yeah.
No matter how perfect it is, it can always be like abused. So, I think we're just going to continue to try to improve the system. I think it has been improved, and if you are seeing some sort of a case that is recurring often, then please let us know, and we'll try to address that case. Right?
And where what is causing it? What kind of situations are not being handled by the vote kick system? I think that's important, because remember, most games actually you can't vote kick somebody. You can
report people.
You can report people, and then the game will take a look at it and see if that person deserves to be banned from the game or not. We are actually giving a lot of power to our players, which could be a double-edged sword. We can have good players that are good at keeping a safe environment, or you can have people gaming the system and abusing. We had people before from clans just banding together and vote kicking people just they didn't like, or even worse, we don't have enough space in the server, let's all get together, vote kick this guy, then there's an open slot for somebody from our clan, which is absolutely awful, and we are absolutely against it, and we'll always try to make sure that this doesn't happen. So that's why giving a lot of power, like banning somebody from the game, is a big deal, and we always try to mitigate that in different ways. So if there are things that are happening, situations that are happening in the game in which the vote kick system is not good enough, that's why we have the mods. But if that keeps happening, the same kind of situation keeps showing up again and again and again, that probably indicates a larger issue that we have to tackle. Maybe changing the vote kick system, or changing something in the gameplay, changing something in a different way. So it's always good to have detailed information of what is problematic.
Okay, cool. So we have time for one more question, and I think it'll be short, and I think it's really interesting, so I wanted to ask it. Oatmeals, will you need a crewman kit for the tank or something special to operate it?
To operate the tank. We need a crew.
Which I thought would be kind of interesting, just from with the truck, you can just get in the truck and drive it and steal the truck. I think for the tanks, it could be kind of an interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we're still figuring that stuff out. There isn't specifically a crewman kit that is planned, but we're still figuring out things like how exactly the tank is going to be built, right? And in terms of using it, there isn't a kit planned, but it's an interesting suggestion, right?
Yeah, we had similar suggestions with the trucks when we first used, do we need keys to use it?
I think it's essentially a key, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess, really to operate a tank, you need multiple people.
Which
So,
is already
that's interesting.
you need cooperation with the team, which goes very in favor in our game.
Awesome. Well, we're gonna have Mark has one last little thing that he wants to talk about, and then I think that's gonna be it for the stream.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say that if you guys like this stream, there is a community stream that happens on the week that the dev stream does not occur. That happens on Thursdays.
Yeah.
Thursday evening at 8, I believe, 8 p.m. Eastern time. And Matt, if you want to post a link to the community stream, some of the top members from the community, they get together and they talk about Foxhole stuff. It's pretty cool. I always try to tune in for it, so I encourage you, if you like this stream, go watch that one. Right?
Yeah. Pretty nice stuff, and they invited me one. I still have to
Really?
find a way.
I'm so jealous they didn't.
Yeah,
invite me.
well,
This-
you know, somebody's a god, somebody's not.
You're right. I'm Satan, right?
Yeah, you're Satan.
I'm Satan apparently. So
I'm just here. On that note, let's wrap it up for the week. If you guys have any final things you want to say, do so now, or forever hold your peace. At least for
I
2
think
weeks.
we're good.
At least for 2 weeks. All right. So we'll be back in 2 weeks. Thank you guys for hanging out. Oh wow.
And
There is something.
just want to clarify that this change in schedule was only for this week.
Oh yeah.
Streams are on Tuesdays
Yes.
normally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mark was on vacation. He was
Yeah.
in the sun somewhere. That's not true.
No.
Basking.
Alright,
in
It
the
was
glory.
raining the whole time actually. So.
See you guys.
See ya.
Bye guys.
Thank you very much.